Picture a river the color of sea glass, slicing through limestone cliffs that have stood since long before the Romans ever marched through Provence. Cliffs draped in wild thyme and lavender, hiding waterfalls that drop 40, 60, even 90 meters into pools so clear you can watch a coin sink to the bottom. Local legend says a lone wolf once stalked these slopes and gave the river, and the gorge it carved, its name. These days, the only howling you're likely to hear belongs to someone leaping off a sun-warmed rock into ice-cold water. But the wildness, the sense that you've slipped into a hidden fold of France, has never gone away. Ahead of you, a gorge cut by millions of years of patient water, a medieval village perched so high it's nicknamed the Eagle's Nest, and a road that climbs from shaded riverbanks all the way up into the clouds. Welcome to Walking Tour France, a podcast dedicated to bringing you a new adventure somewhere in France with every episode. Each week we'll travel to a different destination. From ancient ruins and stunning gardens to fascinating cities, historic landmarks, and hidden gems tucked away across this incredible country. If you're gearing up for your own trip, head over to northstartravelers.com, where you'll find gear recommendations to help you travel smarter, plus a full list of our other podcast shows covering destinations around the world. If you love discovering new places and planning your next adventure, follow the podcast so you never miss an episode. And if you're enjoying the show, leaving a positive review goes a long way in helping others find it. Now let's explore France. You begin at the bottom, in the cool shade of a humpbacked stone bridge old enough to be called medieval, spanning a river that runs an almost unreal shade of green and turquoise. This little cluster of buildings is known as Pont du Loup, the Bridge of the Wolf, and the river itself is called the Loup. Nobody can say for certain whether the name comes from an animal that once prowled these slopes, an ancient tribe that revered one, or simply the wind that howls through the gorge in winter. What's certain is that the moment you arrive here, you've crossed into a different rhythm of France. Cooler, greener, and dramatically vertical. Off to one side, you'll notice tall stone arches marching across the valley and then stopping abruptly in midair, the remains of a railway viaduct that once carried trains through this very gorge, destroyed during the Second World War and never rebuilt. The old rail bed is now a quiet walking and cycling trail, and those broken arches, half swallowed by greenery, are some of the most photographed ruins in the area. Just steps away, a sweet smell pulls most visitors in before they've gone any further. A confectionery called Florian has been candying fruit, crystallizing flowers, and dipping orange peel in chocolate on this exact spot since the 1920s. Through wide windows, you can watch copper pans of jam being stirred and rows of citrus peel taking their slow chocolate bath. And the guided tour inside is free any day of the year. It smells like a greenhouse and a chocolate shop collided happily, and it's worth 10 minutes even if you've already had breakfast. From here, the real climb begins. The road narrows and the gorge tightens around you, limestone walls rising on either side, streaked gray and gold, with pockets of bright green clinging to ledges where nothing should be able to grow. This is the work of the Loup, patiently sawing through rock for something like 30 million years, carving basins, slides, and the kind of turquoise pools that look digitally enhanced until you're standing right above them. Glance down at any pullout, and you may spot a small group in wetsuits picking their way from pool to pool, sliding down chutes the river itself sculpted. This stretch is one of the most popular canyoning routes in the south of France, and watching from above is almost as fun as doing it yourself. As you continue deeper into the gorge, a viewpoint opens up on your left. Simple but staggering, a ledge of rock jutting out with nothing between you and a sheer drop to the water far below. The spot rewards patience. Arrive early in the morning while the light is still low and gold and a thin mist clings to the riverbed, and you'll likely have the view entirely to yourself, long before the day trip buses arrive from the coast. Moving on along the Gorge Road, you pass through a short tunnel blasted out of solid rock, a reminder that this entire route was carved by hand and dynamite in the 19th century just to connect villages that had been cut off from one another since the Middle Ages. As you come out the other side, listen before you see it. A steady, deepening rush of falling water. The cliff opens into a tall green amphitheater, and there it is, a waterfall named Courmes, folding down the rock face for more than 40 meters, fine and silvery at the top, churning to white foam at the bottom. Locals call it the petrifying one, partly because the minerals in the water slowly coat anything they touch in stone, and partly because of the sheer, breath-catching drop. It's been a protected historic site for years, and it's easily the most photographed waterfall in the entire gorge. Continuing forward along the same road, the gorge widens slightly and delivers you to a second cascade, even taller, dropping in stages for nearly 90 meters total into a deep, churning basin nicknamed the Great Cauldron. This one is called the Saut du Loup, the Leap of the Wolf, and a small entrance fee, just enough to keep the path maintained, gets you down a short staircase to a viewing platform where you can take in the falls without getting so much as a drop on you. It draws a steady stream of visitors, so here's a tip worth knowing. You arrive right at opening time before the first tour buses roll in, and you'll have those few minutes of staircase and roaring water almost entirely to yourself. From here, the road turns sharply uphill, and so does the landscape. Olive groves give way to scrubby pine, and switchback after switchback carries you up out of the gorge. Glance back over your shoulder as you climb, and you'll catch the green slash of the gorge below, looking impossibly small from this new height. Eventually, the road delivers you to the foot of a village that seems to grow directly out of the rock itself. Stone houses stacked against a cliff face, a single bell tower poking up against the sky, and nothing visible behind it but air. This is Gourdon, perched above the valley, and it has earned its nickname, the Eagle's Nest, many times over. You leave the car or the bus behind at the edge of the village because what comes next is on foot only. The streets here are barely wide enough for two people to pass, paved in smooth stone polished by centuries of footsteps. Walking in through the old gate, notice how quickly the air changes, cooler, quieter, with only the occasional shop bell or burst of conversation from a cafe terrace breaking the silence. Artisans have worked in this village for generations, and you'll pass workshops where glassblowers shape molten glass into bowls and ornaments, alongside shops selling soap, pottery, and local honey. Following the main lane as it curves toward the highest point of the village, you reach a small Romanesque church built in the 12th century, its single bell tower the tallest thing for miles. It started life as the private chapel of the lords who controlled this entire valley, dedicated in part to the village's patron saint, before becoming the parish church centuries later. If the door is open, step inside for a moment. The stone is cool and plain, almost severe compared to the grand cathedrals elsewhere in France. But that simplicity carries its own weight when you consider how many centuries of weddings, baptisms, and funerals have passed through that same narrow doorway. Just beyond the church, the lane opens onto the foot of an old fortress. Its round towers and thick walls dating in part to the 9th century, when this rocky perch was first fortified to watch for raiders arriving from the sea. Over the following 1,000 years, the castle changed hands again and again, from the counts who once ruled this valley, through a long line of noble families, to a wealthy American woman who restored it in the early 20th century and filled it with antiques and art before opening it to the public as a museum. The terraces just below its walls were laid out by the same landscape designer responsible for the gardens of Versailles, and even from outside you can glimpse boxwood hedges trimmed into neat geometric patterns. Visiting hours and access to the interior can shift from season to season. It's worth checking ahead before you count on going inside. But simply standing at the base of those weathered stone towers gives you a real sense of why this spot was worth defending for over 1,000 years. From the terrace just beyond the castle walls, the village finally reveals the reason it was built here in the first place, a view that stretches, on a clear day, some 50 miles down to the Mediterranean coast, taking in rooftops, river valleys, and a hazy curve of blue sea in the far distance. This is your final stop on today's walk, and it's worth simply standing here for a few minutes without reaching for your phone. Look back down at the gorge you climbed out of not long ago, now reduced to a thin green seam in the landscape, and consider how many generations have stood on this exact spot. Farmers watching for smoke signals, soldiers watching for ships on the horizon, and now you, watching for nothing in particular except the sheer size of the view. Few places in the south of France manage to feel both wild and inhabited at once quite like this one. The gorge below carved itself slowly and patiently, indifferent to anyone watching, while the village above was built stone by people determined to hold their ground against that same wildness. And somehow, after all these centuries, neither one has won. Before you head back down, you don't have to go far for something good to eat. At the confectionery by the river, pick up a box of candied orange peel dipped in dark chocolate or a handful of crystallized violets, made on site the same way they have been for a century. Partway up the gorge, the small restaurant beside the taller waterfall serves a simple Provençal menu and wood-fired pizza on a terrace within sight of the falling water. A good place to refuel before the final climb. And once you've reached the top, a terrace restaurant just off the village's main square serves classic dishes like coq au vin and stuffed vegetables, with a view over the valley that easily rivals anything on the plate. If you have time to extend the trip, a handful of other destinations sit just minutes away. Tourrettes-sur-Loup, the hill town that gives the lower half of this valley its name, is known for narrow medieval lanes, a long tradition of violin making, and a lively colony of resident artists and craftspeople. A little further along the river, the perched village of Bar-sur-Loup has earned the nickname City of Orange Trees, for the citrus groves still terracing its slopes, and for a striking medieval painting inside its church depicting a deadly dance at a long-ago ball. And if you're willing to drive a bit further toward the coast, Saint-Paul-de-Vence, one of France's most visited art villages, awaits. Its cobbled lanes lined with galleries and its outskirts dotted with the country homes of painters who made it famous nearly a century ago. That brings us to the end of today's episode. Before you go, a few quick things. Subscribe so you never miss a destination. Leave us a positive review to help others find the show. And share this episode with someone who loves exploring France. And if you're hungry for more adventures beyond France, visit northstartravelers.com to explore our other podcast shows and browse gear recommendations for wherever your next journey takes you. Your support means the world and keeps these adventures coming. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you on the next walk.